Most iPhone users have never once thought about their eSIM. It sits invisibly inside your phone, handles your cellular connection, holds your carrier profile, and operates silently in the background while you go about your day completely unaware it exists. That invisibility is exactly what makes what security researchers discovered in 2025 so alarming. Because a critical vulnerability was confirmed in the technology that powers the eSIM inside billions of modern smartphones, including iPhones, and the attack it enables does not trigger a single security alert, does not show up in any app, does not produce any warning that anything is wrong. The malware gets installed onto your eSIM silently over the air without anyone ever physically touching your device. And once it is there, it can intercept every call you receive, capture every text message sent to your number, steal every two-factor authentication code that passes through your phone, and clone your entire mobile identity onto a device controlled by someone else entirely. This is not a theoretical threat being discussed in academic papers. This was demonstrated in a live proof of concept on real carrier networks, including AT&T, T-Mobile, and Vodafone. The researchers who found it showed it working, and the implications for every iPhone user in 2026 are something you need to understand right now. To understand why this vulnerability is so serious, you first need to understand what an eSIM actually is, and why it is fundamentally different from the physical SIM card that older phones used. A traditional SIM card was a small piece of hardware you physically inserted into your phone. If someone wanted to clone it or tamper with it, they needed to have the physical card in their hands. Convenient and more secure. No physical card to lose, no slot to damage, no easy way for a thief to pull out your SIM and use it in another phone. But that same design, the fact that the eSIM receives software updates and profile changes over the air through encrypted communications with your carrier, created an attack surface that nobody fully anticipated. The research that exposed this vulnerability was conducted by Security Explorations, a firm led by Adam Godiak. What they found was a critical flaw in the Java card virtual machine implementation used by Kigen EUICC chips. These chips are embedded in an enormous number of modern smartphones worldwide. The vulnerability exploited type confusion weaknesses in the Java card virtual machine, a class of security flaw that Security Explorations had actually reported to Oracle back in 2019. 6 years later, those weaknesses had still not been fully addressed, and the consequences of that delay became clear when researchers demonstrated what an attacker could do with them. By exploiting the Java card flaw, researchers were able to gain unauthorized access to the secure element's memory inside the eSIM chip. From there, they extracted the private ECC cryptographic key that authenticates the eSIM to its mobile network. That key is supposed to be the most protected piece of data in the entire eSIM security architecture. It is what proves to your carrier that your device is legitimately yours. Once that key is stolen, the attacker effectively has the master credential for your entire mobile identity. With that stolen key, the researchers were then able to download arbitrary eSIM profiles from mobile network operators in plaintext. They downloaded decrypted profiles from AT&T, Vodafone, T-Mobile, O2, Orange, China Mobile, and others. These profiles contained subscriber configurations, authentication keys, and the complete technical specifications needed to clone a legitimate subscriber identity onto another device. And then they demonstrated the most disturbing part of the entire attack. They took a real subscriber identity from Orange Poland's network and installed an identical eSIM profile on two completely separate physical devices simultaneously. When the malicious cloned device was activated, it immediately began receiving all calls and text messages intended for the legitimate subscriber. Every call, every text, every two-factor authentication code sent to that phone number, all of it going to the attacker's device in real time without the legitimate subscriber receiving any indication that anything was wrong. The over-the-air element of this attack is what makes it particularly concerning for everyday users. The initial compromise described in the most dangerous version of this attack required physical access to extract the private key from the EUICC chip. But once that key is compromised, subsequent attack phases can be conducted entirely remotely through the SMS-PP protocol that carriers use to send over-the-air updates to SIM and eSIM chips. Researchers confirmed that remote exploitation was feasible through this protocol, eliminating the need for physical device access in the follow-on attack stages. This means that an attacker who has already compromised a Kigen EUICC key has the technical capability to install malicious Java card applets onto target devices over the air without ever touching those devices. The applets, once installed, sit inside the eSIM itself below the level of the iPhone's operating system, invisible to iOS security scanning, invisible to any app on the device, persistent even across factory resets because the eSIM firmware is not wiped by a standard device reset. This persistence is one of the most alarming characteristics of this class of threat. When you think about viruses and malware on smartphones, you likely imagine them living in apps or in the operating system, places that can be cleaned out by uninstalling software or resetting the device. eSIM level malware does not work that way. The eSIM chip has its own operating system, its own memory, its own execution environment that is completely separate from iOS. Apple cannot patch it through an iOS update. You cannot remove it by deleting apps. A factory reset of your iPhone does not touch the eSIM firmware. If a malicious applet is successfully installed at the eSIM level, it lives there until the carrier issues an over-the-air patch directly to the chip, and most users would never know it needed to happen, or whether it did. What can this eSIM level access enable in practical terms? And why does it matter so much to ordinary iPhone users beyond the technical details? The first and most immediately damaging consequence is the complete compromise of SMS-based two-factor authentication. Most people use their phone number as a backup or primary second factor for critical accounts. Your bank sends you a code, your email provider sends you a code, your Apple account sends you a code when logging in from a new device. Every single one of those codes passes through your phone number. An attacker who has cloned your eSIM profile receives every one of those codes on their device at the same time you receive them on yours, or in some configurations before you do. With those codes, they can bypass the two-factor authentication on every account linked to. The second consequence is passive interception of communications. An attacker with eSIM level access can receive copies of your incoming calls and messages in real time. This is not just a financial threat. For anyone in a sensitive professional role, anyone going through legal proceedings, anyone with a stalker or abusive situation they are trying to keep private, anyone whose communications are confidential for any reason, eSIM level interception is a catastrophic privacy violation that happens invisibly with no indication it is occurring. The third consequence is identity hijacking at the carrier level. Because eSIM profiles contain full subscriber identity data, an attacker who successfully clones your profile can interact with carrier systems as if they are you. They can make calls that appear to originate from your number. They can send messages that appear to come from your number. They can manipulate carrier account settings. They can potentially use your identity for fraud that appears on your account records rather than theirs. Now, here's the critical question. What was done about this, and what does it mean for your iPhone specifically right now? Keegan, the company that manufactures the affected EUICC chips, acknowledged the vulnerability after security explorations provided proof of concept. They released an over-the-air security update across their customer base, applying a two-layer mitigation approach. The first layer was an operating system security patch, preventing unauthorized applet load and E. On devices where the vulnerable GSMA TS48 generic test profile was present. The second layer added countermeasures against unverified Java card bytecode execution. Apple worked to ensure that iPhones receive the relevant carrier settings updates that incorporate these protections. But here's the reality that security researchers have been clear about. The effectiveness of OTA, patches to eSIM chips, depends entirely on whether the patch was successfully delivered to your specific device, whether your carrier prioritized its deployment, and whether the patch addressed the specific variant of the vulnerability that could affect your chip. There is no simple screen on your iPhone that tells you definitively whether your eSIM firmware is up to date and secure. This is an infrastructure-level protection that operates invisibly, just like the attack itself. So what do you actually check, and what do you actually do? The first thing to check is your carrier settings. Open Settings on your iPhone, tap General and tap About. If a carrier settings update is available, you will see a prompt to install it. These updates are separate from iOS updates, and many people dismiss them or never see them because they appear as small pop-up notifications that are easy to ignore. Carrier settings updates frequently contain critical security patches for the eSIM layer of your device. Install every carrier settings update immediately when it is offered and manually check for them in Settings General About regularly. The second thing to do is eliminate SMS as a second factor for every important account right now. This is the most important action you can take to protect yourself against eSIM cloning attacks, regardless of whether your specific device is patched. Open every account that matters, your bank, your email, your Apple ID, your password manager, and switch the two-factor authentication method from SMS text message to an authenticator app. Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, and the built-in password manager in iOS 26 all support time-based, one-time password codes that are generated locally on your device and never transmitted through your phone number. An attacker who has cloned your eSIM profile cannot receive these codes because they are never sent over the cellular network. They exist only on your physical device. The single change neutralizes the most dangerous practical consequence of an eSIM cloning attack on your accounts. The third thing to check is unusual data or call activity. eSIM cloning does not always manifest as obvious account takeovers immediately. Early signs that something is wrong with your cellular identity include calls going directly to voicemail when you have full signal and your phone is on, text messages being reported as delivered by senders but not appearing on your device, and unexplained data usage that does not correspond to your actual activity. If you notice any of these patterns, contact your carrier immediately and explicitly ask them to review your eSIM profile for unauthorized duplication or cloning activity. Most carrier customer service representatives are not trained to handle this specific request, but escalating to their technical security team with specific language about eSIM profile integrity will get you to the right people. The fourth check is your Apple ID security. Go to Settings and tap your name at the top to access your Apple account page. Scroll down to the section showing devices signed into your account. Every device listed there should be one you recognize and currently own. If you see any unfamiliar device signed into your Apple account, remove it immediately and change your Apple ID password from a different device. Then switch your Apple ID two-factor authentication to use your iPhone's trusted device code rather than an SMS code. This ensures that even if your phone number is compromised, your Apple account has a recovery path that does not pass through the cellular network. The fifth thing to understand is why this threat is evolving and why it matters beyond the specific Keegan vulnerability that was disclosed in 2025. The eSIM is becoming the universal connectivity layer for every device in your life. Your iPhone, your iPad, your Apple Watch, future smart glasses, connected cars, medical devices, smart home hubs. All of these are moving toward eSIM-based connectivity. The attack surface that the 2025 Keegan vulnerability exposed is not going away as eSIM adoption grows. It is expanding. Security researchers have been clear that the Java card virtual machine weaknesses that enabled this attack are fundamental to how eSIM chips are built and have been present since 2019. One vendor's patch does not eliminate the vulnerability class across the entire industry. As more devices, more carriers, and more critical services depend on eSIM technology, the incentive for attackers to find and exploit the next eSIM level vulnerability grows correspondingly. Your eSIM is not just a convenience feature, it is the foundation of your mobile identity. And in 2026, your mobile identity is the key to more of your digital life than most people have fully considered. Keeping that foundation secure means staying updated, eliminating SMS as an authentication factor, monitoring your cellular activity for anomalies, and understanding that the most dangerous threats to your phone in 2026 are not the ones that show up as notifications. They are the ones that operate in complete silence at a layer of your device you never see and never think about until something goes wrong.